The wind moved slow across the plains, lifting dust from the road like tired ghosts. Eli Carter sat on his horse just outside the town of Red Hollow, staring at the familiar shape of the old water tower. 15 years had passed, but the town looked the same. Wooden buildings, crooked fences, and memories he had tried to bury deeper than any grave. He had sworn he would never come back, yet here he was, older, quieter, carrying a past that never loosened its grip. Eli was a rancher now, known for keeping to himself and paying his debts on time. Folks said he had ice in his veins, that nothing could move him. They did not know the truth. They did not know about the girl who once stood beside him under a cottonwood tree, promising forever with a shy smile and trembling hands. Her name was Clara Mae Dawson, his first love, the one he lost when the world broke them apart. He had heard a rumor at the supply post miles away, a woman arriving in Red Hollow by mail-order marriage, a bride sent from the east to marry a man she barely knew. Eli had laughed at first, then gone quiet when someone mentioned her name. Clara Mae. The sound of it struck him like a bullet he never saw coming. He told himself it was impossible. Clara had left after her father died, after Eli had chosen to walk away from trouble instead of standing his ground. She had cried that day, asking him to fight for them. He had not. That failure followed him across every mile of open land since. Eli tied his horse and stepped into town as the stagecoach rolled in, wheels creaking, horses steaming. A small crowd gathered. Then he saw her. She stepped down slowly, holding a worn carpet bag. Her hair was darker now, pulled back neat and modest. Her face carried the softness of time, mixed with quiet strength. When her eyes lifted, they met his. The world fell silent. Clara's breath caught. She knew that face. The sharp jaw, the familiar eyes that once looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered. Eli Carter stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. She was here, and she was someone else's bride. The saloon was loud that night, but Eli barely heard it. He sat alone in the corner, hat low, hands wrapped around untouched whiskey. Across the room, Clara sat beside a tall man with stiff shoulders and cold eyes. His name was Thomas Klein, a landowner, a man with money, influence, and no warmth in his smile. Eli watched as Thomas spoke for Clara, ordered for her, laughed without humor. She nodded politely, her hands folded tight in her lap. She looked trapped, like a bird in a fine cage. Later, Eli found himself outside, staring at the stars when he heard her voice behind him, softer than he remembered, still steady. "I never thought I'd see you again," Clara said. He turned slowly. "I didn't think I deserved to." Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Clara told him about the years of struggle, about caring for her sick aunt, about letters that went unanswered. Eli felt each word like a stone on his chest. He told her about the ranch, about learning to live with regret. She looked down. Thomas offered security, a home. "After so long alone, I thought maybe safety was enough." Eli clenched his jaw. "Are you happy?" She did not answer right away. When she finally looked up, her eyes held pain she could not hide. Before she could speak, Thomas stepped out of the saloon. His gaze hardened when he saw them together. He warned Eli to keep his distance. Clara was his future wife, and Red Hollow was his town. Eli said nothing. But as Thomas walked away with Clara at his side, Eli knew one thing with painful certainty. Letting her go again would break him beyond repair. Days passed under heavy skies. Tension grew like a coming storm. Thomas made his power known, pressuring the town, tightening his grip on Clara's life. Eli saw bruises of the soul in her silence, fear hidden behind obedience. One evening, Clara came to Eli's ranch. Her hands shook as she spoke. She admitted the truth. Thomas was not cruel with fists, but with control, with threats, with a future that felt like a prison. Eli faced the hardest choice of his life. To interfere meant risking everything, his land, his safety, even her reputation. To stay silent meant losing her forever. At dawn, Thomas rode in with lawmen, claiming Eli had interfered with a lawful engagement. Accusations filled the air. Clara stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. She spoke of choice, of freedom, of love lost and found again. The town listened. For once, Thomas's money could not buy silence. As the dust settled, Thomas turned away, defeated but dangerous, promising this was not over. Clara stood beside Eli, unsure what tomorrow would bring. Eli reached for her hand, not to claim, but to ask. She squeezed back, eyes full of tears and hope. The future was uncertain. The past still hurt, but as the sun rose over the plains, they stood together, knowing redemption often begins where fear ends, and that love once lost can still find its way home. The days after Thomas Klein left Red Hollow felt uneasy, like the town itself was holding its breath. Clara stayed at the small boarding house near the edge of town, keeping her distance from Eli despite the quiet understanding between them. Rumors moved faster than the wind. Some said Thomas would return with papers and force the marriage. Others said he would come back worse, with men who did not ask questions. Eli worked his ranch harder than ever, sunrise to sunset. He pushed himself until his hands ached and his thoughts blurred. He had opened a door he once slammed shut, and now the past and present stood together in the same room. Loving Clara again felt natural. Protecting her felt necessary. But claiming her felt wrong, at least for now. One evening, a rider came fast down the road. Eli knew trouble before the man even spoke. Thomas had filed a formal claim. Clara, according to the law, was still bound by contract. The law favored ink over intention, and Thomas had influence in the county court. Clara heard the news and went pale. That night she stood alone outside the boarding house, staring toward the open plains. Eli found her there. She told him she was tired of running, tired of being traded like property. She said if the law came for her, she would face it, but she would not go quietly. Eli wanted to promise her safety. Instead, he promised honesty. He told her that standing with him would cost her comfort, maybe even her name. She met his eyes and said she had already paid the price of choosing comfort once. Far away, thunder rolled. The storm was coming, whether they were ready or not. The court day arrived under gray skies. Townsfolk filled the small wooden building, whispering and watching. Thomas sat confident, clean, certain of victory. Clara stood straight beside Eli, her hands steady, her fear hidden deep. Thomas spoke of agreements and obligations, of money spent and promises made. He painted Eli as a reckless man chasing old feelings. The judge listened carefully, unmoved by emotion. Then Clara spoke. She talked about loneliness, about survival, about a woman making the best choice she could with the options she had. She spoke of realizing too late that safety without dignity was another kind of cage. Her voice did not shake when she said she would rather face hardship than live without choice. The room grew quiet. Even Thomas looked unsettled. The judge delayed his ruling. Time was needed, he said. More consideration. The decision would come in days. Outside, Thomas warned Eli again. His smile was gone now. He said some things did not need a judge to be settled. Eli knew what that meant. That night, Eli stood watch at his ranch. Clara stayed there too against his advice. She said she would not hide any more. When the sound of distant hoofbeats reached them after midnight, neither was surprised. The men did not come shouting. They came slow and silent, shadows moving through the dark. Eli stepped out first, calm but ready. Words were exchanged, sharp, heavy with threat, but no shots were fired. The standoff was about fear, not blood. Thomas arrived last, his face tight with anger. He demanded Clara come with him. She refused, her voice breaking but firm. For the first time, the power he held over her meant nothing. The moment passed without violence, but the message was clear. This was not finished. At dawn, the riders were gone. The land looked peaceful again, as if nothing had happened. Clara sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun rise. Eli sat beside her, close but not touching. She asked him what would happen if the judge ruled against her. Eli answered honestly. He said they would face it together, whatever came. She leaned her head against his shoulder just for a moment. Not a promise, not a claim, just shared strength. In the distance, clouds gathered once more, and Eli knew the hardest test was still ahead, one that would decide not only Clara's freedom, but whether redemption truly belonged to men who once walked away.